Boss of bosses. He called himself the boss of bosses and lived like a king in a luxury mansion in the middle of a quiet city. That night, he had no idea there were already hundreds of special forces surrounding him. This is the story of Arturo Beltran Leyva, one of the most dangerous cartel bosses in Mexico. Cuernavaca, 2009. In his world, a name could easily be replaced by a title. He chose one for himself, El Jefe de Jefes, boss of bosses. He and his brothers built a cartel that controlled the flow of cocaine, heroin, and marijuana to the north, towards the U.S. border. Money, routes, and fear flowed through him. On every highway, there was someone on his payroll. In every city, there were people ready to tip him off about any police movements. At one point, he was part of the Sinaloa cartel and shared power with other major drug lords. But after his brother was arrested, his family believed they'd been betrayed. The alliance turned into a rivalry, and Beltran Leyva declared his own war on his former partners and the authorities. To survive in this war, he bought not just weapons, but people. Police officers, government officials, even those supposed to fight the cartels, passed him secrets when raids were coming, who was about to be arrested, which streets would be blocked off. For the authorities, he became a symbol of what had to be taken down. Large bounties were placed on his head, and his movements were tracked for weeks. Finally, the authorities located his hideout, an elite complex in Cuernavaca. On December 16, 2009, the city had not yet fallen asleep. In the sky, helicopters on the streets, columns of armored vehicles. Mexican Navy Marines surrounded the apartment complex, blocking all exits. For the residents, it was just noise and flashing lights. For him, the beginning of the end. Inside, on the third floor, Arturo and his men. They barricaded themselves, ready to fight to the last. Gunfire erupted, the sound of explosions filled the air. The battle raged on for hours. When the fight finally quieted, Arturo Beltran Leyva was dead. Along with him, several of his closest bodyguards. He called himself the boss of bosses, but on the cold concrete floor he looked like any other man. Alaska. He was considered one of the most ruthless cartel bosses in Mexico. The Marines finally killed him, but that night his cartel simply stole his body back from the state. Heriberto Lascano, Alaska. Before he became a cartel boss, he was a soldier in an elite special forces unit. Then he deserted, and together with other former soldiers, became part of the corps that would turn into the Los Zetas cartel. Under his leadership, Los Zetas turned into something close to a military machine. Armored pickup trucks, convoys, heavy weapons. They were blamed for mass killings and terror against anyone who got in their way, from rival cartels to ordinary civilians. By 2012, he was on the most wanted lists. The United States and Mexico were offering millions of dollars in reward money for him. On October 7, 2012, everything started almost like any other day. A small town, a local baseball field, people playing and watching the game. Someone notices armed men nearby and calls the military. A patrol of Marines responds to the call. They aren't even sure who they're dealing with. But as they get closer, gunfire erupts from a white van. Inside, there's Lascano and another gunman. In a split second, the baseball field turns into a battlefield. The Marines return fire with intense precision. A few minutes later, the gunfight comes to an end. Lascano lies dead next to the van. The Marines photograph the body and take fingerprints. Later, experts confirm, based on the fingerprints and facial features, it is indeed Heriberto Lascano. One of the most wanted cartel bosses is officially declared dead. His body was stolen from the morgue overnight. All that remained were photos and fingerprints. To many, he became a legend, a boss who was killed but whose body was never seen. But there are those who managed to die twice. El Chayo. There was a Mexican drug lord the government managed to kill twice. The first time with no body. The second with fingerprints and DNA to prove it. Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, El Chayo, leader of La Familia Michoacana and the Knights Templar, Michoacan State, central Mexico. He built a cult around himself. His cartel handed out Bibles to its fighters, filled with his quotes and rules. He banned drinking, yet built an empire on drugs and violent crime. He acted like a protector of the poor, helping farmers and building churches. But at the same time, his cartel enforced curfews and punished anyone who disobeyed. For some, he was a messianic figure. For others, a deranged criminal. El Chayo is handing out Christmas gifts. At the same time, federal police are moving in, surrounding the village. La Familia gunmen find out and block the access roads with burning cars. When the federal convoys get closer, the silence ends. Instead of a Christmas gift giveaway, El Alcalde turns into a small front line of a 2-day war. After 2 days of fighting, the authorities announce Nazario is dead, but no body is ever found. No photos, no autopsy, just the press secretary's words and news reports. A few days later, marches take place in his home territory. People carry signs that read, "Nazario lives in our hearts." For some, he was a spiritual leader. For others, almost a saint, a protector from chaos. Ramon Arellano Felix. He came to the resort town to kill his main enemy, but it ended with him being pulled dead from his car after a routine traffic stop. To this day, there's debate over who really pulled the trigger, the police or his rivals. Ramon Arellano Felix, one of the leaders of the Tijuana cartel, the main enforcer of the clan. He was considered one of the most brutal bosses of the Mexican drug war. He was responsible for planning the murders of rivals, informants, and uncontrollable law enforcement officers. On one hand, Ramon Arellano Felix was an enemy of the United States, controlling one of the most profitable drug trafficking routes through Tijuana. He made it onto the FBI and U.S. State Department's most wanted lists. On the other hand, his personal enemy was Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the leader of the Sinaloa cartel. A bloody war raged between their clans, and Ramon wanted to eliminate El Mayo, not through hired killers, but with his own hands. February 2002, Mazatlan, a resort city, carnival time, crowds of tourists. Ramon arrives there to find and kill El Mayo Zambada. On February 10th, his car is driving down the street when a patrol stops him for a violation. As the officer approaches, Ramon draws his gun and fires twice. The wounded officer falls, but manages to return fire. A brief shootout ensues. Within seconds, it's over. The officer is dead, and Ramon has a bullet in his head. But one question remains. Who really shot Ramon? The official story says it was a random shootout with a cop. But there's another version, that Ramon was lured out and executed on purpose, with a police uniform used as cover. El Metro 3. He started a war against one of the most ruthless cartels in Mexico. Shootouts, kidnappings, convoys loaded with guns. He survived all of it. But on the day he died, there were no soldiers, no rivals, only his own men. Samuel Flores Parrego, El Metro 3, a former cop who became one of the key bosses of the Gulf Cartel. He controlled Reynosa and the border highways, a corridor straight into the United States. Once, the Gulf Cartel with El Metro 3 and Los Zetas with Concord 3 were a single force, one side the bosses, the other their weapon. Then El Metro 3 gives the order to kidnap and kill a Zetas commander. Los Zetas demand the killer be handed over. The cartel refuses. And in that moment, the alliance finally shatters. The war on the outside hit at the exact same time as the split on the inside. On September 2, 2011, on the highway between Reynosa and Monterrey, soldiers found a pickup truck. In the back were two bodies. One was El Metro 3, the other a local police officer. According to investigators, both had been beaten, tortured, stripped down to their underwear, and finished off with gunshots. And the main message was clear. Metro 3 wasn't killed by Los Zetas, and he wasn't taken out by the government. He was dumped on that highway by the very same people he'd shared money and power with.